What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, with a look at the first new Android Wear 2.0 devices available from Google. So these were built by LG and designed in conjunction with Google. So this is sort of the Nexus or Pixel of Android Wear smartwatches, and that's a first for Google. So there's two versions to look at, the LG Watch Style and the LG Watch Sport. So the Style is much cheaper at $249 versus the $349 for the Sport. The Sport has a lot more features, but it's also a much larger watch. So getting to the unboxing, the first watch I want to take a look at here is the Style. So I do have some tabs along the back to cut. So once I lift up the lid, the first thing I'll see here is everything very nicely laid out. I'll find the power adapter in the upper right corner, which is pretty basic here. It's just a USB Type A power adapter. And in the lower compartment, once we remove the cover, we'll find our literature. So it's very nicely wrapped up here. So it's basic literature in terms of warranty as well as quick start information. And below that, we'll find a package containing our wireless charging puck. So this is somewhat similar to the charging puck that comes with an Apple Watch. It basically magnetically attaches to the back of this watch and allows you to wirelessly charge it. So there's no physical connection between the watch and the charger. Again, a very nice, slick solution. So next up, we have the watch itself, and this is the titanium model, which comes with a black leather band. They all come with matching leather bands, which are easy to remove and swap out. So of course, we have some plastic covering the watch itself, so we'll just have to peel this off so we can take a closer look. Now the frame of this watch is polished stainless steel, which looks pretty nice. It's a very minimal design, but the thing that sticks out right away is the fact that we have a crown along the side. That's kind of a new idea for Android Wear. So that's a very important part of the interface design, which we'll take a look at. So getting to the unboxing of the Sport, it's quite a bit different here. It's a little more upscale, and of course it comes with even more stuff. But the first thing you notice when you lift this up out of its cradle is just how much heavier this is compared to the Style. It's almost twice as heavy at 89 grams versus 46 grams. But just like the Style, it is covered in a million tiny pieces of plastic that you have to peel off. So fingernails would be very useful right now. The band is also very thick and rigid. It cannot be replaced because it integrates all the antennas. So it's an essential part of the design of the smartwatch, which means you can't really change up the Style, and it also makes it kind of a big watch for many people. But overall, it definitely feels much more substantial and higher quality than the Style. So removing the tray, the first thing we'll see here is all of the accessories, but along the left side, we'll find a compartment for our USB cable for connecting the charger, in addition to some paperwork for quick start instructions and our warranty information. But we also get our SIM ejection tool. So basically, this is a tool that we use to pop off the back panel to install the SIM, which we'll get to in just a moment. Now, just like the Style, we get an identical travel power adapter for connecting our charger. But there's a big difference in terms of the included charger. So the wireless charger actually comes in this little container, which you have to pop open. And once you do that, it slides right out. So the charger is kind of familiar to other Android Wear devices. So we've seen this with something like the Moto 360. But along the back, you'll see that we get a USB Type-C connector, which is welcome. So we're all moving over to USB Type-C now. And the charger itself is very simple to use. You just drop the watch on it, slots into place, and begins charging right away. Now, both of these watches work with Android or iOS, but in this case, I'm going to focus on Android. So with Android, all you have to do is boot up the watches, select your language, and then you have to open up the Android Wear app, which is a free download if you don't have it. So once you launch the app, it automatically sees the watches nearby that are ready to be paired. In this case, I just want to make sure that the numbers match up so I know which watch I'm connecting to. Next up, if I haven't already, I just need to make sure that my Google accounts are logged in so it syncs up to my watch. It's also going to ask me if I want to stay connected to Wi-Fi, so it's going to transfer the Wi-Fi password from my phone to my watch, so my watch is now connected to Wi-Fi independent of my phone. And that's all there is to it. It sets up extremely fast, much faster than something like the Apple Watch. But of course, one of the first things you'll need to do is run any software updates to make sure you're on the latest version of Android Wear. So when it comes to specs, I think the best place to start is with what they share. So both of them have the same Snapdragon Wear 2100 CPU. They also get 4 gigs of onboard storage. But in terms of RAM, the Sport gets 768 megs versus 512 for the Watch Style. That's partly due to the fact that we have a lot more antennas running on the Sport versus the Style. We also have a larger display, 1.38 inches versus 1.20 inches on the Style. So that display is also higher resolution on the Sport, 480 by 480, good for 340 ppi versus 360 by 360, good for 299 ppi. So both of them look fantastic, but obviously the Sport looks a little more impressive because because it's larger with a sharper pixel density. Both of them are covered in Corning Gorilla Glass 3, so it should be scratch resistant. In terms of connectivity, both of these watches have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 4.2 built in, but only the Sport gets NFC for wireless payment as well as LTE. So this is a cellular device, which means you can get cellular data as well as receiving phone calls directly on the SIM within the watch. You don't have to rely on your phone alone. And of course, with all of this, you need a larger battery for the Sport, 430 milliamp hours versus 240 milliamp hours. Now, although the Sport has a bigger battery, both of them have about the same battery life, although the Sport with LTE can definitely go through it a bit faster. The Sport, as the name suggests, also means it's a little more rugged with an IP68 rating versus IP67, so it has better waterproofing. The Sport is also the only one with a built-in speaker, which is actually quite loud, but both of them do get microphones for Google Assistant support. Now, when these watches are on their charging docks, they also act as night clocks. So all I have to do is tap the screen really quickly to show you your current time and charging status. Now, although the Sport does offer a SIM slot, you don't have to use this. You can still use your phone as the primary input method for data as well as answering phone calls. But if you want to add a SIM for cellular data to run independent of your smartwatch, you can certainly add one. Now, to remove the back panel, you just use the included tool, which slots into the back panel in 3 spots, and then you just twist left, and then it should just pop right off. So installing the Nano SIM is a little tight, but there is a surface just below the slot that allows you to place the SIM on it, and then just sort of slide it up until it fits into place. And then once you're done, you can use the tool to reinstall the back panel. And once that's installed, assuming you have an active SIM, it should automatically connect to your network. Of course, in my case, I'm actually just taking a SIM from my phone and plugging it into my watch, and it works perfectly well. But of course, you may want to arrange something different and cheaper with your carrier. So digging into the watch interface here, right now we're in ambient display mode. So it's showing me my current time and my notifications and complications on this watch face. So I can flick my wrist to wake it up or just tap the screen. Now, in terms of the gestures, you can swipe down to get to your settings, and you can see I have LTE here. So if I swipe down again, you can see that LTE, that means I have a SIM installed, so I have LTE data on this watch. Very handy. Of course, I have other things like I can mute my watch, enter airplane mode. I can also set do not disturb, so I do not get notifications on my watch. I can also jump to my settings panel, which we'll get to later, swipe right to dismiss that and go back to where we were, and then we have theater mode, which turns off the display, so when you receive notifications, it doesn't disturb whoever is sitting next to you. So getting back to that, all we have to do is hit that digital crown along the side. Now, speaking of this digital crown, it sticks out quite a bit, so it's pretty easy to use. So we can swipe up to get to our notifications, so you can see all of our previous notifications here, and I can also use that digital crown to navigate through them. Now, if I press on that crown, that actually takes me to my apps, so you can see my app selection. So we scroll through them to access them. So for example, if I want to launch Hangouts, it takes me right to the Hangouts app right on my watch. So I can use this to scroll through my previous messages or swipe up on the screen. And to exit that, just swipe to the right. It takes you back to the watch face. So going back to our apps here, you can see that the most recently used apps is right up top. Now, there are plenty of pre-installed apps. A lot of them are Google related, such as our Contacts app, the Fit app, Fit Workout, a flashlight, so we can turn on the display and use that as a flashlight, which is very handy. We also have Android Pay. That's limited to this device because we have NFC built in, so we can use Android Pay with our watch. Now, if you want to surface some of your favorite apps toward the top, all I have to do is tap and hold on them, and then you will get them at the top with this little star icon, which indicates that these are one of your favorites. If you want to undo this, tap and hold until that goes away. Now, one of the most important new apps here is the Play Store. So this is new with Android 2.0, so I can actually download apps directly on this watch. I don't have to use my phone, which is great, especially if you're an iPhone user. So I can see some of the categories here, or I can see some recommendations, such as the Nest app. So if I click on this, I've already owned this on my Android device. All I have to do is click install. You can see some screenshots for the app, or I can just click install. So now if I go to my app drawer, you'll see Nest up top here. So if I launch into that, you'll see my living room temperature. I can tap on that and adjust it just like I would on the thermostat. Now, because we have a SIM installed here, we can actually use that SIM to place phone calls directly from the watch. So if I go to the phone app here, I can go ahead and select a contact, call them, and this will dial directly from the watch, and I can call them using the speaker built in as well as the microphone. Text input has also been improved with Android Wear 2.0. So of course we can use our voice. This is a test of voice dictation on Android Wear 2.0, which works pretty good. We can also draw our emojis. So we can do a frowny face, or we can even draw shapes, and it gives you a selection of what we may want from the emoji list. So for example, I can draw everybody's favorite emoji here, and it should recognize it right there. But we also have this new keyboard, which works extremely well. So for example, I can just start writing words. This. And as I write, it's actually scrolling with me and will speed up depending on how fast I'm writing. It's a really good solution. It's one of the best I've seen so far. Now when it comes to these watch faces, you can actually change them pretty easily just by swiping across on them. So I can swipe left or right to navigate through my available watch faces. So I have 3 of them by default. And as you can see, when I'm in this overview, I have these editing options down below them. So for example, I can select this one, and this will allow me to change the style and the data, as well as whether I want to see the unread notification indicator on the watch face itself. So in terms of data, this allows me to change the complications that appear within the watch face. So for example, I only have 3 here, but I can tap on them and adjust them. So I have several categories of complications I can pick from. So for example, I can just choose the Hangouts app, so that complication will add those notifications to the watch face, or I can go to General. So this allows me to add an app shortcut, so that takes me directly to the app drawer when I tap on it, or I can go to my Now Playing screen, which allows me to quickly access and control my media playing on my phone or my watch. Now there are several styles I can pick from here, which includes additional notifications or just different styles to the watch faces. In this case, it's just giving me different options in terms of those complications. So if I want 4 of them, I can go ahead and add a new one. You can also edit the watch face in kind of an interesting way. So for example, if we go to our settings here and select styles, I really like this interface. So right now I'm in the color section, but if I swipe up, I can change the hands, or I can change the markers. So if I go back to color here, I swipe left and right to navigate through the available colors. So you're kind of locked down to certain color combinations here, so you don't have infinite combinations. But for example, if you want red or blue, you can go ahead and select them. We can also swipe up to change our hand style. So there's quite a few to pick from here. Some of them are quite neat. And then we can also change the markers. So again, you can change the style of the faceplate. Now, if you like complications, there's actually a great watch face here, and that's this one. So if we go to our editor and select data, this is called the portions watch face. You can add quite a few of them. You can basically turn the watch face into a separate launcher for all your favorite apps. A really neat way of sort of managing the content on your watch. But again, you can select how many complications you want on this watch face, as well as the styles. Now, if I do a long press on the clock, this will take me to a different type of editor. So I can see my colors, hands, markers, layouts. I can turn off the unread notification indicator, in addition to a background image which I can apply to this clock face. So I have 2 I can pick from, Element Art and the Now Playing screen. So Now Playing will basically show me my track art in the background of the watch face, or I can choose Element Art. So if I apply that now and go to the clock face, you can see that some art has been applied to the background, so it gets a little more colorful. Now these 2 buttons along the side are unique to the Sport watch, and by default, the one on the upper right activates the fitness app, while the one toward the bottom here activates NFC payment. But you can customize this under settings. All I have to do is jump to settings and scroll all the way down to personalization. And under personalization, we do have customized the hardware buttons. So we have top right and bottom right. So if we select that, we can select different apps to open when we hit that button. Now for both watches, to activate the Google Assistant, just tap and hold the crown. What's the weather like tomorrow? Now when it comes to the style, we do have most of the same features, but of course we don't have the LTE radio, so you can't install your own SIM. We lose those dedicated buttons for NFC payment, which it can't support. We also lose that quick launch button for the fitness app, but we do have a fitness app built in here because it does have an accelerometer, which will work with some fitness tracking. So you can set your goal here in terms of steps and that sort of thing. But of course, without GPS, you'll have to rely on your connected smartphone for keeping track of distance. Of course, the digital crown works the same as well, so you can scroll up to get to your notifications or press and hold to get to the Google Assistant. Now, getting to settings, you can access it from the drop-down, or you can go to the app. So there's actually a settings app right up top here. So in terms of settings, we have our display settings, which includes auto brightness, so you can enable that or lock in the brightness if you want. We also have font sizes, so if you want, you can select larger font sizes. And you can also enable or disable the always on screen. So if you put your hand over the watch face, this will actually set it to this ambient mode, so you can still see the time and your notifications, but it's not using the full brightness of the display. Now under sound and notifications, because this has a speaker, we have settings that the style does not have, such as media volume. So you can change the media volume here. So this is playback of music or that sort of thing. So if you want to hear that on your watch, you can do that. We also have alarm volume, more interesting here, so you can hear your alarm volume. So it's a pretty loud speaker. You can also select vibrate on call, so you get some taptic feedback on your wrist when you're receiving a phone call. We also have the watch ringtone. So when you're receiving a phone call, the watch itself will have a distinct ringtone. So you can select them here.
Ring, ring, ring.
We also have our notification preferences. So if you want to see your notifications persistently on the screen, you can select high or always show, or just show for 5 seconds, which is what I prefer to do. Of course, you can also turn that off. We also have our do not disturb preferences. So if you enable do not disturb, we do have some exceptions we can select here, just like you would on a normal smartphone. We also have an app manager. So this is where we can uninstall apps if we want. So you just tap on them and then we have several options. We can force stop, change the permissions, go to advanced, or just uninstall the app entirely. Now, one of my favorite features of Android Wear is under gestures, and that is wrist gestures. This is something I wish was on the Apple Watch. So if I enable it, it is turned off by default, so you have to enable this. And I put this on my wrist. This allows me to basically flick my wrist in order to navigate through my notifications. So I can flick up to navigate down through each notification, or flick down to navigate up. This also allows me to quickly glance the drop-down menu. Under connectivity, this watch has two things that the Style does not have, and that is cellular and NFC, but we do have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth settings in here as well. So if you want to connect to a Wi-Fi network without using your phone to do so, you can set it up right here. Under cellular, this is where we can turn off cellular data. You can also see your data usage and enable data roaming. Under NFC, this is where we can turn off NFC or enable tap and pay. So I think the big news here really isn't the hardware, but Android Wear 2.0, which does bring some welcome improvements, and it does perform a bit better. But the hardware is relatively unremarkable. Although it's great to have LTE on a smartwatch, I think the size and bulk of the smartwatch, in addition to the compromises that come with the built-in antennas, doesn't make it the perfect solution for everybody. While the LG Watch Style, I think, is underbuilt. It doesn't offer as many features as I think many smartwatches should have by now, and it's a little too small, at least for me. So when it comes to battery life, it definitely depends on how you're using these watches. The Sport has a huge battery in it, but if you're using LTE, you'll definitely zap through that battery much faster. And of course, if you have the always-on display active, that's going to shorten the battery life. But for the most part, if you're not using LTE, you're going to get a full day of charge out of these watches, and you want to charge them overnight. So that's pretty standard for most smartwatches today. So although both watches are well made with great displays, there really isn't the perfect middle ground. So I'm still looking for the right watch size and capabilities to make this the perfect Android Wear smartwatch. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this look at both of these watches. If you did, please give it a thumbs up to let me know, and I'll see you again in the next video.